This is Moments of Truth with Andrew Marks, co-founder of Success Hacker. Today, I am joined by a longtime colleague and friend, Nils Vinje, speaker, customer success leader, and now author. Nils,
Hey, Andrew.
welcome. Tell us a bit about what you're doing these days.
Thanks, man. It's a pleasure to be here. Wonderful to be on your show. And as you said, yeah, longtime friend, man. We've known each other since the very beginnings of both of our adventures in the customer success and consulting and training space. Andrew, the world of customer success is still rapidly changing, rapidly evolving. It's getting some tremendous traction, especially in the SaaS space and even outside of the SaaS industry. And that I love to see. I know you do as well, because it just brings more opportunities for people to learn the power of what is possible when you implement customer success principles and strategies. But the biggest change, the biggest newest thing that I've been working on is I wrote a book. And it's called the 30-Day Leadership Playbook. And it is designed for leaders, not just of customer success organizations, although it's highly applicable, but leaders of all kinds of organizations based off of my experience in the leadership seat as a VP, a director, a manager, as well as a leadership coach working with my clients over many, many years, helping them to implement the strategies that ultimately get them to the next level. And it's a blast. I'm super excited to share a little bit about it with you today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading it. Now, you mentioned to me that before we started that you pulled this thing together pretty quickly. I'm impressed.
So the actual writing of the book, it took me 20 years to write a book in 30 days.
It took you 20 years of effort and experience, but you were actually able to put it down in writing relatively quickly. And Todd and I have tried to write a book before. That's how Success Hacker was originally created. Was we started out writing a book, and it's really hard to write a book.
That.
Yeah,
I remember that. I remember one of our conversations in the early days in 2015. You and Todd were talking about having a book and launching it at Pulse. And I know, and I specifically remember that point when I was going into this and made the decision to actually write a book. So the way I actually wrote the book in 30 days. I wrote the first draft was 30 days. The next 30 days was all about polish, and I hired, plenty of people to help me on the editing and all that sort of front. And the final 30 days was really around getting all the big picture pieces and puzzle, the cover design done, all the formatting and all that good stuff. So those were the major chunks. And the only reason I was able to do this in 90 days was because I sought the advice and help and process of somebody who had already done it before. So there's a wonderful organization called Self-Publishing School. And their sole job, the only reason they exist, is to take people from zero to published author in 90 days. So I followed their system step by step. That's how I was able to get this done in 90 days. If I hadn't been part of that and I hadn't, seen their presentation and engaged with their program, no way I would have been able to get this done this fast. So it just goes to show you that how important it is that when you make a commitment to do something, that you do it in line with somebody else who's already done it, because they've figured out all the hard stuff and they put it together, and we have access to courses and content, much like everything that you are selling and you guys on the Success Hacker side are training. You could go spend years trying to figure that stuff out for yourself, right? But more important is to spend a little bit of money, trust people who have been there and done it, and put it into a coherent, comprehensive format, and then engage and just follow the process. That makes it infinitely easier.
Yeah, and they give you a framework, and you follow the framework. Right. It doesn't mean it doesn't thwart your creativity at all. It just gives you step-by-step process. Exactly, and that's what we train as well. So leadership. So leadership is an important topic. It's something that we're working on and training on as well. Just this notion when people hear customer success manager, they immediately look at that and hear the manager piece of that. Okay, you're managing. What are you managing? You're managing people. You're managing process. You're managing customers. So tell me more about. I understand your book is more geared towards just leadership the leadership of people and organizations. Mm-hmm. So tell us more about that.
So to your point about teaching frameworks, this book is a framework in and of itself. I can't perfectly align to every single situation that all of my clients ever have, right? That's why I, as a leadership coach, have to operate at a framework level. So in this book, there are 4 key pillars to this leadership playbook. And those are leading yourself, leading others, leading with communication, and leading with metrics. So within each of those pillars, then there are a number of specific strategies and tactics that I go through in order to help the individuals progress in their skill set in each of those different disciplines. And what's interesting is that regardless of if you're an individual contributor or a manager or a director or a VP, the principles in nearly the entire book across the board still can apply. And that's the beauty of a framework, because I'm providing the guardrails to operate within. And then my clients and the people who read this book have the ultimate freedom to implement the strategy in the best way for them, knowing what the ultimate outcome is they need to do. So for those people who are early in their leadership career or not even in a technically a leadership position managing other people, that's completely fine. If I were in that seat again, I'd want to know what's coming and what I should be prepared for so I can do things right the first time as opposed to stumbling through it, which of course we all have done. And for those who are, mid-career and senior level leaders, hey, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to continuously enhance and improve and grow your leadership skill set. And that's what I love about this book, is that I can, the principles and the concepts and everything can be applied from everybody across the board. And once you understand the key elements of each core concept behind each pillar, everything becomes infinitely easier, just like we were talking about before.
Right. So have you got a teaser? You got a best practice teaser that you can throw out there that you're willing to share?
Of course. It's one of my favorite ones, and it literally was responsible for one of the biggest fundamental shifts in my life. And that was the concept of, it's called a social contract. And this is the unspoken agreement between an employee and an employer. When I say unspoken here, I mean literally unspoken, as in when an employee, a CSM for example, goes to work for a CS manager or director or VP, they have a certain set of expectations. They want to be paid a certain amount. They expect to be treated a certain way. They expect to have some form of balance in their life. They expect to work this kind of way with their customers, whatever it is. There is a set of expectations that you make when you sign up to join a particular team. Now, the leader who hires that individual and is working with that individual also has a set of expectations. I expect these people to be on time. I expect these people to deliver a high level of output. I expect these people to think strategically. I expect them to act tactically, to support the growth and development of our accounts, right? So what happens when there's these two sides of these expectations and they're never spoken? Well, what happens is somebody gets screwed. And what I mean by that is somebody makes a decision that does not align with an expectation the other side had. It could be on either side. And conflict erupts and frustration builds and tension increases. And the reason why it happens is not because somebody was deliberately trying to go against whatever this person wanted. It was just the fact that they didn't know. So
they
in
didn't
all
talk.
those
They
examples,
didn't communicate.
They didn't talk.
Right.
They never set the social contract up in the beginning.
Right.
And if you set the social contract up in the beginning between a team, somebody who's leading a team, again, whether it's VP, director, doesn't matter, and the employees who are part of that team of this is what I expect of you, and both the other side gets to say this is what I expect of you, they discuss and they agree, the game changes, because then you know exactly what is expected and you can hold both sides accountable to this. So I've done this kind of workshop in many, many client situations where there was tremendous tension between a VP of CS and his or her respective teams. And there was frustration, and it simply came down to a misalignment on expectations. And when we clarified it and made sure everybody was on the same page and even documented it, and I've even had people sign a social contract, everything from that point on was a completely different experience within that team than it was beforehand.
I love it. I think as you were talking about that, I was thinking about how it's so important in customer success that you clearly define the customer's definition of success for that very same reason. There's no ambiguity. Right? There's you can't have some unwritten definition of success, right? You gotta, and that's why we have the success plan. You gotta lay it all out. You gotta define success. You gotta quantify it, right? To make sure that you and your customer both understand this is how we define success at this point in the customer journey. And also it drives accountability. So it's interesting. The parallel there is very interesting.
That's the framework. That's exactly right. The success plan is the exact manifestation of the principle of the social contract being applied in a customer and CSM relationship, 100% guaranteed. And if you can get that up to the surface level and you can have it documented and you can have it articulated, that's why it works so well. Right? It's not just because it's a pretty plan and like, yay, we can all see it in one place. It's because fundamentally our expectations are aligned. Therefore, if one party does something that is not in line with the expectations, we go back to the plan. Exactly. We don't go attack that person. No. We go back to the plan and say, here's what we agreed to. What changed? Right? So if you create this neutral third party thing in the middle, that's the ultimate thing, because that's what we all agreed to. Then it takes the personal aspect out of it. And we just go back and say, you know what? I understand. This was what we agreed to. Yeah. I get it. I was wrong in that case. Let's move on. Let's go down this path.
Yeah. Or let's see where we're at. And let's adjust if we need to. Right. But it's so 100%. Much better than picking up pulling up the statement of work or the contract. Right. Because when you get to that point, you've got a degradation of the relationship when you're pulling out contracts. Right.
Yeah, no, you never hope to never get there, but yes, you're absolutely 100% right. And that's a very difficult place to come back from, much like on the manager and employee side. When you get to the point of looking at, a conflict or a violation of the social contract occurs, let's say on the employee side, and the employer did something that was not in line with their expectation. When you get to that point, right, emotional ties get cut very quickly. Yeah. And frustration builds. And in today's world, especially in the CS space, if you are a CSM who has been in the seat doing good work for pretty much any period of time, but at least a year, 3 years, whatever it is, you can write your ticket and go to work for pretty much any company that you want. Right. Yeah. So we have to be, as leaders, we have to be hyper sensitive to what it is that we're doing and how do we ultimately impact the lives of the people who work with us. And we have a chance to do that every day, which the social contract is a great way to focus on that.
Yeah, and that's it reminds me of that. It's probably cliche at this point, but people don't leave companies; they leave leaders. They leave leaders, right? And so if you don't have that well written social contract that and communicate it, then you're risking them leaving you.
Yeah. 100%. And what is the real cost of a CSM leaving? It's gigantic.
Super.
Right? Let's not even go there. Not even the money and the dollars of somebody and replacing them, but the opportunity cost. Because nobody decides one day to leave and then the next day they're gone. Right? We got sometimes 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months of complete detachment and low performance as a result of frustration that came from a misaligned expectation. Right? Sometimes that's as simple as it is. So you can save ourselves a huge amount of time and effort and energy and cost if we do this small work up front and really focus on the psychology piece of our relationship with our teams.
I love it. Yeah, and not to mention the damage that could be done to the customers that person is dealing with as well. I'm a huge fan of Richard Branson, who believes that your customers aren't number one, your employees are number one, and you treat your employees in that respect as number one, then that attitude flows to your customers. I 100% agree with that perspective.
Me too, because they're ultimately, customers will come and go. As much as we don't want to think about them churning, they will. Right? But what is there through and through and what controls the ultimate experience that your customers have is your people. Right? The single most important thing. And lots of people talk about it, but they just don't know because frankly, nobody ever taught them how to be leaders. Right? When you become a leader, especially in the CS profession that has accelerated and exploded at an incredible rate over the last 5-7 years, when you get into those seats, nearly everybody who's in a manager, director, or VP position has either not been in that position before or very long, or never had the opportunity to go through any formal training or education or anything around what it means to be a leader. And that was really at the core of my work with my leadership clients, coaching clients over the last several years, was around bringing these principles that are so important, just like the social contract, and then talking about it and figuring out how to apply it in their situation the resounding response usually is, I had no idea this even existed. Nobody ever taught me this. And that was a big reason why I wrote the book, was because I wanted to teach people these principles that are simple in nature and can be incredibly powerful and impactful to help ultimately you become the leader you've ultimately always wanted to be. They just don't know how. And oftentimes aren't able to ask or aren't comfortable asking, and that's totally fine, right? But here's a playbook where there's 30 different topics of all these different kinds of strategies to implement that can transform your relationship with your teams, your relationships with your colleagues and your executive team, and everything else across the board.
Yeah, and it's a huge void out there. I've been in I've been in high tech for nearly 30 years. And there are only a handful of companies, and we're talking some of the largest companies in tech that I know of, that have a some sort of management training program. I mean, we're talking the likes of HP and SAP and IBM. You know, we're talking the big behemoths. You know, but there's thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of smaller tech companies that don't have the resources or access to that type of, you know, to have that type of program. And so you have these people coming in and you want to move them up to into a management role, and either one, they wing it until they figure it out, they fake it till they make it, you know, or they get lucky enough to work for a leader themselves that has the ability and the patience to coach and mentor them along.
Or
they hire somebody like yourself to do that coaching for them.
Exactly. And that's even inside of the largest organizations, the SAPs and HPs of the world, like you were talking about. Even if they have leadership development programs, there are so many people inside those organizations that the admittance to those programs is a very, very small percentage. Right. So these are the people, typically the people they want to put on the fast track. They call them the high pos or high potentials. The people they know, they've identified that this is somebody who has future leadership capabilities, whatever it is, right? And those are the people who get those opportunities. But not everybody inside those companies even gets the opportunity to go through that. And it is a massive, massive void, because one of the interesting things is that I hear a lot of people oftentimes talk about how, you know, they want to work to the point where they don't have to work anymore, and then they can go and volunteer their time in an organization or in their community and really make an impact on people's lives, right? I'm sure you've heard similar things, sentiments over time.
Of course.
The reality is, as a leader, if you're ever in a leadership position, even if you're not in a leadership position directly, you have the ability to impact other people's lives every single day. Right? But what it comes down to is understanding the strategies and tactics, having a playbook, and knowing how to implement those things in order to get to a different place, in order to have a different outcome, in order to try something different than you've always done before, because frankly, it probably didn't work at one point or another. And you probably learned it from somebody else who did it by watching somebody else. So who knows where the strategy actually came from? Like, far more important is being in control and saying, I know the place to run. I know these situations. I know my team. I know these people. I know what they're going through. And I have the playbook now to be able to take this to the next level in these areas, because this is a key thing that I need to address. You know, that ultimately is what's at the heart of this. And that puts the onus of control on you, the individual, the leader. Like, it's up to you. Nobody's going to do this for you. It's 100% up to you 100%. To make these decisions and seek out the insight and the guidance and the strategy and the tactics, and then put it into action.
Love it. And when are we going to be able to see this book in print?
September 1st, 2020 is
Excellent.
Launch date. It will be available on Amazon. It will also be available on my website, 30dayleadership.com, 30dayleadership.com. And want to buy on the website, I'll include got a couple $100 in free bonuses and some special add-ons, so that everybody can take a look there and grab a copy of the playbook.
That's great. All right, that sounds wonderful.
Thank you.
If you are watching this interview right now, it is probably because we have dropped it the week that Nils is launching his book. So good luck with that, Nils. And as usual, we're huge fans and supporters of you, and we'll continue to be and do everything we can to help you out.
Hey, my pleasure being here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been a blast. All the way back from, I was reflecting back before we got on today, thinking about the first time you and I met was in December of 2014, when we were both going out to start consulting in our respective areas in customer success. And we were the first people to even have the conversation of being consultants in the space. And I specifically remember you telling me about, I don't want to just build a practice. I want to build something bigger. I want to build something much, much larger. And the impact that you guys have had with Success Hacker and the training and the certifications and all the work you've done with the different education institutions, phenomenal, man. So I'm super impressed, really thankful to still be here talking to you 5 years later after that. Kind of amazing. But thank you so much for the time, and I really appreciate it.
Likewise. And hopefully once we can get together again, we'll have to grab a whiskey like we used to.
That you sounds like a plan.
All right.
Yep.
All right,
sounds
Nils.
like a plan.
All right,
Take
man.
care.
Nice talking to you. Thanks.
Cheers. Bye.